Are you guys scared of the dark? Because if you are, then this story is probably gonna freak you out. It comes from a user who says that when he was a kid, he went to an old boarding school that had one building with 3 floors. One day, while he was walking down the hallway on the 3rd floor, he and his friends started hearing whispers coming from one of the rooms. Now, this wasn't anything new because the school was extremely old and they were convinced that it was haunted. But what was different this time was that the whispers seemed to be coming from behind the locked door of room 6. See, that room had been locked up for decades, and no one was ever allowed in or even near it. The teachers would always tell the students that the room was off limits because it was structurally unsafe and that the whole thing was just a bunch of nonsense. But, of course, that didn't stop anyone from trying to get in. The students would sneak around after curfew and try to pick the lock. But every single time someone got close to the door, it would slam shut and they'd hear chains dragging metal moans. Yeah, scary stuff. But this particular day, our protagonist and his friends were just walking past and they didn't hear any moans or anything like that. All they heard was whispering. So our friend decides to walk up to the door and he starts listening closely. He could hear what sounded like 2 people talking to each other in hushed tones. They were discussing something about a ritual and how it has to be done correctly or else the entity wouldn't be pleased. Then one of them said something that piqued our protagonist's curiosity. He wanted to know what would happen if someone entered room 6. So he and his friends decided to find out. They took turns trying to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. No matter how hard they tried, the door remained firmly shut. But then something unexpected happened. The door creaked open by itself. Our protagonist and his friends froze in their tracks, unsure of what to do. Should they run away? Should they keep standing there? What was in there? Suddenly, the sound of chains dragging echoed through the room, making it clear that whatever was in there was not happy about them being there. The presence felt evil. So our friend slowly backed away and looked back at the door. It was slightly ajar, revealing a glimpse of the room's dusty interior. The sight sent a shiver down his spine. Hesitantly, he stepped inside. The air grew colder, sending goosebumps all over his body. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he noticed that everything was covered in dust, as if it had been abandoned for many years. Then he saw it, a single chair in the center of the room, facing directly towards him. And in front of the chair was a fresh set of footprints leading straight to it. The footprints were perfectly preserved in the dust, as if whoever made them had just vanished into thin air. Our protagonist cautiously approached the chair, his heart pounding in his chest. As he got closer, he noticed that the dust on the chair was undisturbed, suggesting that it had never been sat in. Was the room a setup for some sort of ritual? Had the person who made the footprints sat in the chair to await whatever was coming for them? Our protagonist couldn't help but wonder. Just then, the chains dragging sound came again, and this time it was much louder. The door to the room suddenly slammed shut, plunging our protagonist into total darkness. He panicked, thrashing about, trying to find the door in the pitch-black room, but it was no use. He couldn't find it. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the panic in the room ceased. Heavy footsteps could be heard approaching the door. Whatever was on the other side of the door was now trying to get in. Our protagonist screamed as the footsteps drew nearer, but his voice echoed strangely within the room, as if he were trapped in a cave. The door began to shake violently, rattling in its frame. Our protagonist huddled in the corner, too terrified to move. He closed his eyes tightly, bracing for whatever was about to happen next. When he finally mustered up the courage to open his eyes, he found himself alone in the dark room. The door was still shut, but the chains were silent. Our protagonist stumbled out of the room, nearly tripping over his own feet in his haste to get away. He didn't stop running until he reached his dorm room, where he collapsed in a heap on his bed, shaking and sobbing uncontrollably. The next morning, our protagonist and his friends returned to room 6, but it was no longer there. In fact, the entire wing of the school seemed to have vanished overnight, as if it had all been a dream, except for the footprints, which were still there on the dusty ground. So, I don't know about you guys, but that one was definitely creepy. Let me ask you a question. Would you dare to enter room 6? Comment your answer below. And if you liked this story, then be sure to like and follow for more eerie tales. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.